Hey, welcome to episode 3 of Unplayable. We're so glad you tuned in for a third installment of this trilogy. It's better than Star Wars, y'all. We're back to talk about some games. How we doing, people?
Pretty good.
I'm still okay. You just said we're better than Star Wars every year. React to that.
Feeling really good after that.
It's we made a trilogy, guys. By 3 episodes, we're complete now.
Mm-hmm. That's consistency.
3 is the number of completion.
Is that completion in Star Wars terms? Really? I think we
it's
we need to do at least 9 episodes and then some side podcasts.
Yeah, are we going to address all the crazy Star Wars news today? Is that appropriate for this podcast?
I probably don't know a lot of it because I tend to like avoiding knowing things. But
no, you were blowing up our text thread, Mike. You were okay. I'm all in.
There are things that I do know, but I was trying. I actually heard the spoiler or saw on Twitter was spoiled. The one thing that I thought was super cool about the Ahsoka trailer or whatever. And someone just like podcast? One word.
I feel like that's not our jam.
The name of that character, and I was like,
nice. Nice. Yeah, so if you don't know,
that's a thing. I still haven't watched the trailer though. I might.
Are we?
That I know.
Are we truly a spoiler-free podcast, guys? I don't
know.
Is that our jam? Is that part of our vibe?
We can just say before we talk about it if we need to.
Yeah,
then they can just tune out. Mike, your camera unfocused when you put your finger in front of it and it hasn't refocused.
And it hasn't refocused. My camera's terrible.
There it goes.
There it goes.
He's
back.
I thought I needed glasses for a minute.
By the way, speaking of camera, I need to apologize to our listeners in episodes 1 and 2. I feel like everything I did, because I can see these guys, I talked about the video elements, but never addressed the audio-only audience. And I see you, audio-only audience. And we're going to be a better radio show for you today.
Yeah.
We're going to explain things. So,
unless you're on Spotify, because even on Spotify, it's video now. So
that's true. I listen to all my podcasts while I'm driving, though, so that's not the safest thing.
Me too.
Okay, let's talk about some games then, since Mike doesn't want to spoil Star Wars for people.
You guys can spoil it. I'll be back in like 20 minutes.
Okay, so we got lots of different game news this week from games that we love. We're gonna start with Lorcana. We got another.
Let's go. Lorcana. Oh yeah, I'm so glad you had it up.
Well, so if you notice my different background, people. Oh God!
Unless you're just listening on a podcast and you don't see it,
I can't show it. So as you can tell, for those who are watching, I am in Chicago right now, in my in-laws' basement, recording on my laptop, which is not a normal thing. And I have a new laptop, and I haven't given Chrome permission to share things apparently, so I can't pull up my screen sharing right now. If anybody else has the card, feel free to do so. And while you do that, I'll just talk about the card if anybody else wants to pull it up on lorcania.com and possibly look into our next item too. But we have Maurice.
Let's go.
Jim, would you tell our faithful listeners what movie Maurice is from?
Oh, I don't see the card, but I do know it's from my favorite Disney movie, Beauty and the Beast.
That's right.
I actually didn't know that.
That's your favorite?
That Beauty and the Beast was
really
Jim's favorite movie, but that this character was from Beauty and the Beast. I had no idea.
Really?
Yeah, it's probably been 20 years since I've seen that movie.
They even remade, they did a live action.
One.
It was a great live action movie, I think.
I heard it was good. I heard it was good. So this card is Maurice, world famous inventor. Is he a world famous inventor in the movie or no?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Well, he's not famous per se.
He's who? Oh, okay.
Bell's dad, man. Granted, I know more about this than I would have 5 years ago because my kids love Beauty and the Beast. In fact, my son says his favorite Disney movie is the one where Gaston starts to rally up the people and it's the whole line is kill the beast, kill the beast. And so my 5-year-old runs around the house screaming, kill the beast, kill the beast.
Are you saying that he's aligning himself with Gaston?
I think he is. And I'm very concerned, guys.
Gaston is definitely one of my favorite villains in Disney.
Agreed.
For me, anyway. Like, when Villainous, like, they dropped the first one, and then they, like, were doing a poll on what villains we wanted to be in, like, expansions, or, like, in the next expansion, and Gaston was, like, you got to vote on, like, 3 of them. It was, like, Gaston, Hades, and Scar were the most popular, and I definitely voted for Gaston.
Nice.
One of you guys going to bring the card up? I was waiting to talk about it before.
Let me see if I can. I have it up on my screen,
and I didn't find it.
I open the chat, Jim, in this little browser. I put the
here. I got it.
I found it.
There we go.
Oh, we both got it.
There we go.
Boom. Okay,
so
pretty blue color.
Maurice is a blue, cost 6. Theoretically, he has a 2 attack value, 7 defense. He's Dreamborn, Mentor, Inventor. Has an ability called Give It a Try. Whenever this character quests, which we'll go back to, you may pay 2 less resources, maybe, for the next item you play this turn. And then he has another ability that says it works. Whenever you play an item, you may draw a card. So the first thing I noticed right when this was spoiled was this idea of questing. We haven't heard about questing yet.
Jay, you on a card at least.
Right.
Have we heard about questing anywhere else?
Yeah.
Or this
in part of their initial marketing was you send your glimmers or whatever on quests to gain lore in order to do something. So we know that the little icons on the right that they're hiding here are called lore, and I guess they're going to quest and gain the lore that they have on the card is my guess.
Right.
Maybe sort of Keyforge style. I don't know.
Yeah, those were the kind of the 2 theories I came up with. The first one is that it's like Keyforge, where it's basically reaping. You just exhaust your hero and you gain however much man or lore or whatever it is on the right side of the card. Or that it's going to be more of a style that's like Lord of the Rings LCG for those who have played that old game, where you commit a certain amount of characters to questing, and then the rest of your characters will be available to fight, basically. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm curious if this game's going to be like I do something, you do something kind of a vibe, or if I do all my things and then you have your turn, or if it's like interactive like Star Wars Destiny, where it's like I exhaust to quest,
right,
and then you exhaust hook to challenge, and then if it's something like that. I like the interactive piece to it if it does, but
how many other card games do that? How many card games are not I do take my whole turn, you take your whole turn?
Not many.
Besides Destiny. Is there any? I didn't play Netrunner, so I don't know.
Netrunner was not like that.
So there's not any, really.
There might be some, but not that I've played.
Okay.
Is Ashes like that or no?
Ashes is like that. Yeah, you're right. Ashes is the other example. I'd be surprised if it was that way, just because it's not the typical design. Legends of Runeterra is like that, isn't it? No, it's not.
Legends of Runeterra is pretty weird, but it's kind of its own beast.
Yeah.
I think the thing that leads me to believe that is not the case is the first ability that it has. Whenever this character quests, you pay 2 less resources for the next item you play this turn. I feel like it would say something like this round if it was a back and forth style game. So I would put my money on it's not.
It is a cool card though, and like so many of the cards that we've seen are super high cost, assuming the top left is the cost, but it seems to be that way because it's the same symbol they're using for pay 2 less resources here. So it's a cool card. I'm just wondering how playable some of these high cost cards are actually going to be.
Yeah,
I see this card and I see support synergy, and I'm thrilled for that. So bring on all the supports and the items. I want them all.
Dash.
Like a droids player.
Yeah, I mean, this type of card, we know nothing, obviously, or not much about the gameplay, but but this type of card is usually like pretty good in a card game where you're getting like multiple benefits from doing the thing that theoretically your deck wants to do. So if the game works like other card games generally do, I feel like this is going to be a pretty good card.
Even maybe just like a build around card. Like if you play this card, you're playing a whole archetype.
I wouldn't be that surprised if this was a legendary card. Like character wise, it's not like the most exciting to me, but I think like ability wise, like it's a fairly complex card. It has like multiple abilities with multiple types of things that it does. Like a pretty decent chunky stat line for its cost. So
have they mentioned anything about rarity of cards?
Yeah, they have. Yeah, there's. I think
they have not. They have not defined it though. Like if you look at all the cards, there's different types, but they didn't say.
They say what the types are, but they haven't sort of confirmed what the symbols mean.
Like there's
and
super
like
rare.
Which symbol correlates with which rarity.
Right.
Yeah, but
So
you know how many
uncommon.
like rarities exist in the pack odds of getting which rarity.
Okay. Cool.
What we don't know is if there's like sort of extra collectible kind of stuff like alternate arts or like
foils.
Yeah, I think normal foils are confirmed, but not like sort of secret rare type of foil stuff.
Right. I think that if they take any hint from Flesh and Blood, that they should do kind of some crazy things,
sort of thing, right? Like,
but that'll be for our collectability podcast. Calm down. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Shut up. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So Lorcana, what's next?
Yep. I want to talk about Shatterpoint. Someone bring up that other link.
Let's do it.
Don't.
Mike's got it. I got it. You're already sharing your screen, so.
Oh, am I? I thought I stopped and you started.
We see your trackers and ads blocked.
Look at that.
600,000? Holy crap.
That's pretty impressive.
Mike, I typed it in chat.
You what?
In the chat?
Yeah, I already pulled it up.
I don't see it.
Made it.
Am I sharing a different screen?
I still see. There you go.
Wow, that's weird. I didn't even do anything. Okay.
Professionals.
For audio listeners, this is going to be a really fun segment of the show.
This is when you come to the professionals for your games podcast. So yeah, I'm still tracking like Shatterpoint news and everything just because there's something about the game that keeps drawing me in. Even though I do, as many have noted, this is like an assemble and paint the miniatures kind of game, which for some is like, that's what they want. I do not want that. I want X-Wing where it just comes ready to play. I want to play games.
Same.
You know? But the gameplay and some of the ways that the strike teams are assembled and putting guys together on the board gets me really excited. So they did this little Maul article. They actually did a few articles, but I just want to highlight. You can kind of see some of the detail and like the Maul figure. I just think that looks really cool. I think it's a little bit bigger than like Marvel Crisis Protocol figures or minis if you've seen those on the table.
I'm reading their little excerpt here, and it says his shattered body. You see what they did there? See what they did?
Clever.
Nailed it. If you scroll down, Mike, you can see
Lord Maul.
His cards right below that. Like they basically show his cards. Some of those have kind of popped up on demos and like grainy video images, but this was like the first time it showed like, oh, this is what Maul can actually do. And as you can imagine, he can hit really freaking hard with a lightsaber.
I'm so confused looking at this. Like, is this a skill tree? Like, is this?
We don't see anything currently.
I don't know what happened to your screen.
I don't know either. Do you see it now?
No.
There it is.
Right.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah. So actually, this is one of the unique mechanics. This is good for like a game podcast, but typically, like in a game like this, like minis, you roll attack dice, they roll defense dice, and it's like, oh, I got 5 attack, you rolled 3 defense, so I hit you for 2 damage, right? Mm-hmm. Like that's what you kind of expect in a game like this. But in this, instead of just doing 2 straight damage, you move that many spots down the combat tree. And so if you look on Maul's combat tree right there, so you start with the orange on the left.
Interesting.
So if you're looking at Dark Rage on the left card, If you only got one success versus their defense dice, you just do the orange one, which is those two little symbols are 2 hits. So even if you get one success, you'll do 2 damage. If you got 2 successes, then you get to choose which way on the combat tree you want to go. If you want to go up or if you want to go straight across. And the way the tree unfolds, different things happen in the game. So you have a little bit more agency, a little bit more decision on like, oh, do I want to like be crazy? I just want to get as much damage in and try to do that, or do I want to control this person, throw them like throw them away from the objective so that
that's cool.
They can't win any points off this thing.
So if you were like 2 over and you're gonna sort of move 2 spaces down this track, do you do both of the things along the track, or you just do what you land on? You do.
Yeah,
okay, you do all of it. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
so if you're like, I don't know, 5 ahead or 6 ahead or something like that, it looks like you can do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 hits on something.
4, 5, 6, 7.
If you go like down the bottom.
Yeah, you'd have to get 5. You'd have to get 5 more successes than your opponent, which is
hard to do, I imagine.
Hard to do, but
possible given the fact that it's on a card.
Right.
Okay, that's pretty exciting.
Yep. And there's like characters get wounded instead of like completely destroyed. So if you roll up with your Obi-Wan and against the Maul and you just blank out on defense, Maul can't just like wipe out Kenobi in like one shot. Like he'll get wounded, and so it'll be a little harder for him to do things, but he's not out of the game. So it's not like immediately. Sometimes playing X-Wing, you'd roll in with your high cost ship, and if you mismaneuvered and you bumped into something or whatever, you could just get blown off the table and you would lose round 1 basically, which is sort of a feel bad. But they've like done it in this way that doesn't happen. And also victory is like scored in momentum, like which side is like clearing the most momentum in the battle. It's not just like, oh, this person just like straight up won, but like who's actually winning the whole battle, not just who killed a guy.
Jay's not convinced.
I can't just rush past this. Okay, so I'm looking at this thing and it makes me want to vomit, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, just looking at this.
Yeah, these are a little hard to parse.
I'm not saying the concept is bad. It sounds like it makes sense, like mathematically what they're trying to do makes sense. There had to have been a better way to do this. Or a better visual aid to do it, because this looks terrible.
I think Maul's looks a little bit more crazy than others. Like if you scroll down to Ahsoka's, it feels a little bit more like
we don't see anything.
Less intense on the.
Apparently, you're not going to see anything.
It'll get
there.
There it is. So like if you look on the left side, like you can see like
it's simpler. Yeah,
it's simpler. But I definitely see what Jay's saying, where it's like, I don't know. Looking at this as like, I guess once you know what it is, like it's fairly easy to understand. But just looking at it, I like very difficult to understand, like, and read and parse.
I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I think that's. I mean, as we learned with like Soulforge Fusion, graphics matter. You know,
yes.
like
yes. And like if a new player walking up to somebody playing this and sees this, they're going to be like,
you see immediate complexity, and you're like, this isn't for me.
Exactly.
Yeah,
when in reality, it's not that complex.
Yeah. It does look. Yeah, it's the perception of complexity versus like
this
what
looks sick, though.
Actually is.
I'm glad you think so. I wish I knew what you were talking about.
Hey, at Gen Con, we will do a little demo together.
There we go. Just the model for Ahsoka.
Yeah, the model looks really cool. I mean, the art looks really cool as well.
Yeah, it does. It does.
Art. They definitely did more like animated Clone Wars versus like trying to.
Which I think is fine.
Dang. Yeah. And it'll catch up in 5 minutes apparently. But what I am currently looking at also looks cool.
Okay, I'll let you know if you're right or not as soon as it catches up.
Yep.
So there you go. Did they announce anything else, or is it just Maul and Ahsoka?
They talked about the Obi-Wan pack. So you come up with, when you bring a list, it's called a squad, and you have 2 different strike teams that has a primary leader like a unit, a secondary unit, and then like a supporting unit. And so Obi-Wan's pack basically came in, and you don't have to run it this way, but he comes with like Obi-Wan, Clone Commander Cody, and then like 2 of the 212 clones or something like that. So they basically said, "Oh, this is coming, but we haven't seen the cards yet." So.
Very cool. Very cool.
Nice.
Well, I mean, I'll give it a go. I'm still not like into the whole idea of like creating or like putting them together and painting them and all that stuff. Not just because like it takes so much time, but I don't think that I'm good at it. And it's like I want my miniature to look exactly like what I'm looking at on the screen. You know, like
yeah,
I will not settle for less than that.
Yeah,
100%.
I honestly think there's a massive market for people who like to put them together and like
Oh, yeah.
to paint them.
Oh, Asajj finally popped up. That's what you're talking about.
Mike's favorite.
Okay, yeah, that's
My
cool.
favorite.
So my goal and my plan would be to buy the core set and find someone that I can just straight up pay. Be like, okay, give me
Yeah.
what's your
Make
what's
this
your
look
rate?
nice.
Yeah, make it look pretty.
All right. What other news we got?
All right, and this next news will actually bring us into our main topic. But does someone want to bring up?
I can bring it up if you send me a link, but we can go ahead.
It's in there.
It's already there.
The Fantasy Flight games.
You should bring it up. I'm going to stop sharing because apparently mine doesn't work.
I'm going to share it right now because I got it up, ready to go. Window. There we go. Next evolution. You guys see it?
There it is.
Marvel Champions, next evolution. And it's not an announcement about the third announcement they're going to make in 2 weeks about the announcement, okay? It's the actual product. So this looks kind of cool. Next evolution.
Tell our audio listeners what we're looking at, Jay.
I just did. Marvel Champions, next evolution. There you go. It's
Great job. See you next week.
It's the new big box for Marvel Champions. This is like what, 5 or 6 big box campaign expansion for this game. How long has this game been out? 2 years? It was like during
longer than that.
What, 3 years? They have a ton of content for this game. They have pumped out some content. Was it? Holy crap. Okay, it's been a long time then, but still. So we're getting Cable and is it Domino or Domino? Domino. Yeah, that's cool. And I know her from Marvel Snap too now. So I don't know how to like make this image bigger. I can't. Oh well. So it looks like there's what I haven't looked too much at the actual stuff because I kind of like going into it a little bit blind. But looks like we got what, 7 villains here? That's a ton of villains.
I don't think so.
1, 2.
I think that's just part of the same. That's part of the same. It's like the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
They're all like it's like a group of villains that you have to fight.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Let's see here. What, Juggernaut's in it? That's cool.
Yep. Yeah, Juggernaut's a fan favorite.
Mr. Sinister, Strife. I don't know who Strife is. Who is that? Do you guys know?
I don't either. No idea.
I know Mr. Sinister. He creates a copy of himself when you play him.
Jim's our lore expert. He watches all the shows and comics. So, Jim, can you fill us in, please?
Yeah, definitely. So Cable is a really cool mercenary who fires stuff and swings from buildings that he shoots.
Oh, cool. Nice.
I played the latest one. I didn't play the 2 before that.
I didn't play the Mojo Mania one, the mini campaign that was like its own set, but the X-Men one I did, yes.
Red Skull. Who was it? Spider-Man? That wasn't Spider-Man, was it?
Yeah.
I was. I was I thought that was Red Skull, wasn't it? The first
Yep.
Yeah, we played it together. What do you think, David?
Yeah, I think um, of these games that are cooperative and have a solo mode, Marvel Champions is for sure my favorite.
Hmm.
Um, I'm gonna say, well, I should say I'm not the biggest cooperative player, so I'm gonna try to leave my like personal preferences aside and save that for later. I think as a game, I think on theme, I think they do a really good job of like pulling out like what is this hero, what's this villain. In the comics, they've been able to like add new things and keep the villain scenarios really fresh, so it doesn't feel like, oh, I'm just fighting the bad guy over and over in every scenario. Like they've done some unique things. I think um yeah, like in the Mad Titan Shadow Box, they did some cool things with like Hela, where it's kind of like a dungeon crawl. Like you got to get through these like places and defeat these like kind of big, not minions, but like kind of the next big bad guy before you can even get to Hela. That was really cool. And Sinister Motives, which was a Spider-Man box. I mean, it was just all Spider-Man, and I'm a Spider-Man like major super fan. So for me, that one I probably played the most of any of them because it's like, oh, you play Sandman and then you fight Venom and then you're fighting Mysterio and then you've got the Sinister Six. And yes, although Jim and I have played a few campaigns together, we've tried to on our days off, we've done like we're gonna take 2 days and just knock out a campaign together.
Like 90% of my plays of Marvel Champions are solo plays, which is
Yeah.
interesting because you mentioned you don't like co-op games that much, or like it's not your jam or whatever. But like you play a lot of it solo, so it's almost not even a co-op game at that point. It's just
True.
a solo competitive game almost, which is
Yep.
interesting. But yeah, I feel like for me, every time I've played like King, I played all the X-Men stuff, and they actually do a pretty good job of making each villain feel like you're playing a different game and you're trying to do different things. And then all of the heroes also feel very, very different. You build their decks way different. Even if they share like the same card pool, you're not really playing the same decks from one hero to another. So that's cool. It does feel like too, like they're really leaning into it being a cooperative game. So like I don't know if you would consider this an issue. For me, I wouldn't. They have some like power creep. So the X-Men heroes felt like they were incredibly strong. Like they felt like way better than some of the original heroes. And it's like going back and looking at like original Hulk or like She-Hulk, and it's like they're just like nothing compared to what they're putting out for heroes now, which I think is fine because it's not a competitive game. So yeah, I think they're doing some cool stuff. I'm gonna
Nice.
stop sharing this.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, it's definitely the theme is what pulls me in the most, like the Marvel theme. I think if it was a different random skin, I don't know how much I'd want to keep up. But I've bought everything they've released so far because there's something like that just makes me want to keep up and have it on the shelf.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely was a game that like truly saved me during the pandemic from utter just yeah, just being able to bust that out. I also think it's a great game for parents who have young kids, like in my season of life, where because truly, like there's sometimes where like I'm playing a game and oh shoot, someone woke up from their nap. I need to go take care of this and do dinner and everything, and I can
Mm-hmm.
just leave it for a couple hours and come back to it, or I can even leave it overnight if I'm just like, oh, I'm tired and I'm whatever, I can come back to it tomorrow and still like continue the fun. I feel like there's not a lot of games you can do that like in paper games. So
It feels like
yeah.
the best solo game that is like a card cooperative game, like LCG style of like constructing a deck and fighting against something. I think it's the best solo one. Even better than Arkham Horror, which I don't think is very good solo, and
Yeah,
better
I
than
would
Lord
agree
of
with
the
you.
Rings.
I haven't played Lord of the Rings LCG, but I've played a ton of Arkham Horror, and I I don't think I've ever actually played solo, nor would I want to. I feel like the fact that there's like a narrative campaign, at least for me, like really is so much better when you're playing and experiencing it with other people. Whereas like Marvel Champions, I actually feel maybe even the opposite, where like it's cool to play with other people and sort of like I don't know, slam your head against the boss for a while and try and beat it. But like I don't know, it's not the most satisfying thing to me in the world to just like I don't know. It feels a little bit too much like solving a math problem to me, or at least it did when I was playing the early stuff. So that's sort of why I was wondering and hoping that the newer stuff is a little bit different. But
I don't know. And I think I mentioned this before on this podcast, but I have to give him a shout out because the Solo Champions League. Yeah, your camera.
Yeah, I'm blurry again.
The Solo Champions League is phenomenal. The guy who runs it is just so passionate and so creative and keeping it fresh. Like it's in season like 14 and there's 5 rounds and you can hop in and out of rounds. You can play a whole season, but he comes up with these scenarios like, hey, you're going to play this villain. Maybe it's an old villain, but with new modular sets. I think the modular sets are one of the cool things that Marvel Champs brought into the world of like games where even if you played the villain a million times, you can add the Rhino modular set or the Wrecking Crew or something just to make it different. And so I feel like where Marvel Champs shines for me is when it's not just, I'm just going to come up with a random deck and play this game and it doesn't matter. But in stuff like that, like on Discord chat, like where it's like, come and play these games. You're going to play this round 3 times. You're going to report your scores of how much threat did you leave on the board? How much damage did you take? How many turns? And like you get a score from it. And then you compare your scores to everybody else in the league.
You found a way to make a cooperative game competitive.
Yeah, honestly. And that's what makes it so fun, honestly. But the culture of the league is not competitive at all. It's like, because you could just lie.
Yeah.
And you could just, but again, like what is, if you're going to lie to try to win a cooperative league in Discord, it's like, okay, like there's nothing on the line. So I feel like everyone that does it, it's like it's the conversation. Like, okay, here's the scenario. How would you build a Groot Justice deck to beat this particular scenario? And everyone starts linking their decks in there and like, here's something I'm trying to. I'm really leaning into the Shield archetype or whatever. And that's where it became fun for me. Where it was like, this is fun because it's about the community. It's about talking and swapping ideas, and then just seeing like, who. And even in the league, there's an award for like whoever takes like the worst loss of the round. like if awesome. You just get destroyed on like, and you're just there's so much threat, and so everyone just kind of laughs and cheers for them, and so that's what makes the I don't know, the Marvel Champs really fun for me is when I can participate in stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. But what year? One thing that you brought up there is talking about like the numbers at the end of one of those games, and I think that's a big key difference between what some people find enjoyable in a cooperative game. I guess we're kind of getting into what our topic is for the day. It's cooperative games.
Should we just address it? Yeah. We're talking about cooperative games, everybody. Yay!
Go team.
And the 2 biggest ones are Arkham Horror LCG, and then at least if we're talking about like LCG competitive, like deck building kind of games that are cooperative, and they're on 2 opposite ends. And I think it's I like that Mike brought up something that I thought about when I was thinking about cooperative games, and it's that like Marvel Champions I like less, or I like more with fewer players, like 1 or 2, whereas Arkham Horror I like with 4 players, 3 to 4 players is way more entertaining to me. Not that Arkham Horror can't be played solo, because it's kind of like reading a book. If you like reading a book or doing a choose your own adventure, you get the same kind of feeling. So I understand why people would play it solo. But for me, I enjoy it playing and experiencing it with other people. And I think that's a big difference between, like I said, what people look for in cooperative games, what different people look for. Marvel Champions has a theme to it, right? And like you can feel the characters and what they're doing, but like the overarching story is like one panel of a comic book, so there's not actually like any real theme. Whereas like Arkham Horror, it's like you read passages, you make decisions, you get acquit, like in Lost Age or Forgotten Age, I think it's what it's called. Like you pick what items you want to take with you on this expedition, like rope or lantern, and it has a different effect on what the campaign does. So for me, Marvel Champions kind of just comes down to numbers a lot of the time. Like the first time you play it, yeah, you're gonna see cool new stuff, new mechanics, but it ends up boiling down to me is like I don't see the characters anymore. I just see mechanics, which is fine. I still enjoy it. Like I have everything for Marvel Champions, but it doesn't scratch the itch of storytelling to me. And I think cooperative games need to tell a story.
I think I mostly agree with that. I think that there's room for ones that don't. Like I feel like Marvel Champions, like you can sort of imagine your own story happening in the middle of a Marvel Champions individual game. Campaign aside, like you can just sit there and play against Rhino or something like that on heroic difficulty and hate your life. But like the narrative to me, like definitely enhances the experience, and especially like playing with a group and sort of like trying to have like a shared experience that you can then sort of have stories about, talk about later. I feel like the narrative element, the decisions that you make, it's just, if it's implemented right, it's more decisions that you get to make, and I feel like that is like the thing that generally makes games fun. So that's sort of like about it. Jim, you're awfully quiet. Are you a co-op fan?
Y'all were going at it, so I was gonna just let it be. Yes, I've played a lot of Marvel Champs. I've played some Gloomhaven as well, as far as like working together to kind of clear the dungeons. Yeah, I definitely see what both of you guys are saying as far as David kind of wanting that like snapshot kind of quick game that you can like pick up, put down. And yeah, I just think it comes down to what kind of gamer are you? Like, is it to kind of get a quick escape of everything else going on, or can you actually take a full day or extended period of time to be just like, right now we are in Arkham Horror, and like that is kind of like your mind like it's teleported there. But yeah, I would agree. I don't necessarily get that at all from Marvel Champions. It kind of feels like, cool, let's like get our powers ready, decks built, and go at this thing. So I think just because I like those like math kind of games anyway, I've totally been fine with it. But I could definitely see if that's not an appeal at all to you, why it wouldn't like speak to you as much.
Makes sense. You brought up Gloomhaven. Jay, you've played a lot of Gloomhaven. I've only played like the first 6 or 7 chapters of Jaws of the Lion, but the system is really, really cool, and I would like to play more.
Yeah, I'm glad I got you to go pick that up whenever we were chatting about it. And Jaws of the Lion specifically is really good for like getting into Gloomhaven because it has like the regular Gloomhaven doesn't have the book that like tells you where to put everything and like has the tiles. You have to actually like look at a campaign book and like put tiles together and then like put the items out. So it's a really, and then like the tutorial for that is fantastic to learn how to play. Like the first 5 scenarios of Jaws of the Lion is just a tutorial where it like ramps up. It's really cool. I love Gloomhaven, and I actually just started a new campaign because they released the digital version, and you can play through like the whole campaign. Yeah, it's really good.
Okay, I've been meaning to get it, but I haven't gotten it yet. I have it on my Steam wish list.
Nice. It was free on Epic not that long ago. I should have texted you and told you to pick it up.
So if I get it on Epic, the two of us can hop into a game together.
Yeah, it's called cross-platform, so I have it on Steam.
So it doesn't matter where I get it.
Right. But it's enjoyable, and it's definitely like it's an RPG feel to it too, where it's like you're one of the coolest mechanics in that game to me too is that when you create a new character, they have a retirement kind of like clause, like you randomly draw from a deck, and it's like once this character has defeated 20 cultists, he retires and you have to make a new character. Dang. Or like he's completed 10 missions or looted 100 coins or something ridiculous. And then when you retire that character or achieve that, it unlocks a new type of character because there's tons of characters in the original or class, I guess is what it is.
It's sort of like a roguelike built into a dungeon crawler almost.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like Rogue Legacy, the board game.
It's pretty cool. I like that game. So that would be one of my favorites. That Arkham Horror. I guess we can go around and say what our favorites are. Arkham Horror, Marvel Champions. I like a lot. I haven't played the Lord of the Rings LCG as much as I would like to. And then there's two more that I think I'm doing a disservice about talking about co-op games in this podcast. But I haven't played the Ashes one yet, which seems really cool. And
I have that sitting over here, but it's sealed in its box. So
of course. And then the Keyforge one I haven't played.
Same.
I have.
Yeah, we should probably talk about that.
I have two of the packs. I just haven't played it yet. I don't know why, but David has. You can maybe enlighten us on what you think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, so Keyforge, that's probably an interesting part of this conversation of like there are games that were released like Lord of the Rings, Arkham, Marvel Champs that are like designed to be co-op, and there are other games like Keyforge or Ashes that are designed to be competitive, but they later introduced this like cooperative like way that you can play the game. So Keyforge during the pandemic released a scenarios like a print and play, but now the new company actually like published it and you can go buy it in the store. But they released a Keyraken scenario, so you fight this big giant sea monster thing with your decks. So they basically took the rules of Keyforge and figure out how do you use these same mechanics and use any deck you want to beat this thing. So on the pro side is one, you can play it by yourself, which is most of the times I've played that scenario is because I'm like, I want to play a game, but I am on my own. I'm on vacation and I don't have a lot of room in my bag to pack. So I'll throw in this scenario in a deck, when I'm, with my morning coffee or something on vacation. So I think that's cool. I think one of the cool things specifically for Keyforge is you end up as a Keyforge player opening some decks that you're like, this isn't a good competitive deck, but some of the decks are actually great for like the cooperative scenario because there's the Keyraken specifically needs a different or like has different strengths that a deck that you would never win with in a tournament would actually do great in this scenario. So it gives you use for your other decks, which I think is really unique too. So they released a second one, the Abyssal Conspiracy, which I haven't played, and then they're coming out with a third one that's coming with the GameFound campaign for for people who opt in, but that has ties to the next set of Keyforge after Winds of Exchange, Fall of the House Gormengeist or something like that. So, anyways, I haven't played it a lot, but I know other people who love it, and that's like their goal to like beat it at different difficulty levels or beat it with every deck they own or do different things. So I do think there is something cool about a game when you have multiple modes where you can play competitive or you can play cooperative and appeal to like even your friends differently who want a different experience. Because one of the questions we were going to ask is like, when do you prefer playing co-op versus competitive? And a lot of it has to do with like, well, who am I hanging out with?
Same for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm playing games with my wife, it's co-op games because she is much more competitive than I am and does not like when I have more experience in these board games than she does.
Understandable.
Yeah.
I think, like you mentioned, like Keyforge specifically, I feel like making a co-op version of the game works really well because of that dual nature of being able to like go back and check out old decks. I just think I haven't played them, but I think it really like designing that would be a really cool challenge to try and figure out how to make scenarios that otherwise crappy decks would be more useful. And I think that would definitely be my goal if I were to design Keyforge cooperative scenarios, is trying to figure out, all right, so like some of the best decks are either key rushing decks or super control decks. Like what kind of scenario do neither of those things matter for you to play? So yeah, I think that's cool. Yeah. So what do you guys dislike in co-op games? I think I have one.
I feel like, yeah, go for it.
I'll start. I think when you play a game that like somebody brings a game with them, they're like, "Hey guys, we're gonna play a co-op game," and they end up just piloting the entire time.
Yeah, that's the
Okay.
worst.
Hey, I'm right here. Just
quarterbacking.
at me. What?
So Pandemic is a great
He's
example.
throwing
of one
me
that,
under the.
I mean, if you know what you're doing with Pandemic and you see somebody making like unoptimal plays, it's like almost impossible to not be like, hey, maybe you should do this instead. But then it just feels like you're playing every hand anyway. So it's like, am I even playing with friends and letting them be creative with it?
Right.
So I think somewhere there's just definitely optimal lines that don't like favor creativity at all. I think that's sometimes a struggle for me because I'm just like, well, what's the point? But if it is like you can bring your own flair to it, then I think those are great.
So Pandemic has an issue with what's called quarterbacking. It's when someone takes over the entire game and plays it for everyone. Because it's perfect information, everyone plays with their hands face up and everything. So I think designing a game to where your hand is not knowledge to other players is one way you could play that. It's still kind of weird though, because then it's like you have to kind of talk in such a way that you can't be like, I have this in my hand, because then it's just the same issue.
Super weird.
So,
like, oh, hey, if you do this, maybe good things will happen.
So how do you? I don't even know. I guess I would have to really think about it because I've played a lot of cooperative games. How do you design a game to where it's like no one can quarterback it, and it's not where you're like, I have a really high number, but not that high, but it's a little high.
I wonder if the like, if you'd need to introduce variance in terms of like the outcome of things. So it's like Arkham Horror, for instance, it's like there are semi-optimal sort of like lines that you can take, but you always have the chaos bag to contend with, and you can always either, you know, succeed at a test that you might not, or just like get absolutely screwed, which is what happens most of the time. So if I'm imagining a game that is like, you know, on your turn, you're doing something, you're making decisions, but like the choice that you make or the ultimate effect is decided by like a dice roll almost, or like is mitigated by a dice roll, like maybe it obscures the sort of like best line enough to where that doesn't happen. I mean, like our Arkham Horror specifically has cards that say like you are not allowed to say that you have this card, or like you have to make this decision by yourself. And obviously it's cooperative, you can kind of do whatever you want, like the rules are pretty loose, but they attempt that in order to solve that problem. But I do agree that is definitely a really annoying thing about cooperative games.
Do you think Arkham Horror suffers from that a little bit, where it's like you the start of the round, you see where all the monsters are, you know what your objective is? Do you feel like sometimes someone's like, all right, we need to take care of this, this, and this. Do it however you want.
Sure. Yeah. I 100%, because it's like you can math out the bag, right, and say, okay, you have an 80% chance of like succeeding at this if we do things in this order, where you go and take these actions and then I go and take these actions, like we have this X% chance of success, and like that's the best line. Like you can definitely still do that. I try not to play that way, but it's definitely possible.
I don't feel like Marvel Champions is that way. I don't feel like someone quarterbacks it.
It can be though, because it can be like the more experienced player can just be like, okay, if you advance the villain to stage 2, he's gonna pull out a minion from the encounter deck, and then that's gonna screw up the plan. So don't advance the villain. Let me do that. You just wait your tread some water, and it can be that way. And I think that's some kind of my hang up with co-op games sometimes, is like it feels like it's not as fun for me to be like, oh no, do this, or you should do this to make me happy. It's like, I just want you to do your thing, and then I want to do something that's better, so you feel bad about losing to me. Like,
so sweet.
I wonder if there's room for like a cooperative game that actually like each character, each player uses completely different skills. So like if you're really good at math and I'm really good at something else, like maybe the skills don't overlap, so that I'm not telling you like how to do your job, so to speak. Like keeping the roles so separated that, you know, maybe there's it kind of eliminates that possibility.
So there are 2 games that I can think of off the top of my head that are co-op games that do this well. They're not the kind of games that we talk about really on this podcast that much, but they exist.
And they're unplayable.
Is one of them Captain Sonar?
One of them's Captain Sonar, and the other one is called Escape, which is like
that's another one of my favorite games.
And both of those are real time. And having something be real time really puts a wrench in someone being able to quarterback, because you have a limited amount of time. They can't go through, examine everyone's things, and then be like, this is how to do it. Captain Sonar is even worse, because it's like you're just shouting at each other what you're doing. It's hard to explain what the game is like if you haven't seen what it is. It's basically like 2 teams of 4 against each other with a giant board in the middle, so you can't see their stuff. And you're playing Battleship, but you're moving your ship around the board. And then you eventually someone's like, all right, we're shooting. And everyone has to stop. And then we say where we're shooting at. And if we hit, then we win. It's really cool.
Yeah. So like you have one person that's tracking like where the other team is moving, trying to relay that back to your own team. It's a really cool game.
It's very chaotic, but both of those games don't allow quarterbacking. But they're also real time and not like the kind of games that we probably want to be able to play in terms of like constructed games.
Yeah. So Mike, you said something earlier that you were like, you mentioned something like it's the moments where you do something cool and it's the story you created, and like you can reflect back on like, remember this when we did X, Y, or Z. Do you feel more compelled by cooperative stories like that, where like, oh, remember that one time like we got destroyed playing this thing? Or do you feel more compelled to tell stories of like, oh, I built this deck and got top 8 at the World Championships?
Oh, definitely the former. Like I'm probably the least competitive out of all of us. Like I enjoy competing, and for the right game, it can be really fun. But the thing I like about competing and playing like at that level is sort of just like being part of that sort of piece of the community almost, and like having stories to tell at like a big event, or, you know, being able to like, you know, flex a little bit that, you know, your way around a game. But you know, I definitely remember like moments in cooperative games, like specifically Arkham Horror is like the one that I played the most. So that's the one that I have the sort of best memories of, I guess. And it's like, okay, I remember the game that like my wife and I were playing, and we chose to sacrifice this one person to the, you know, giant monster, and because of that, like all this stuff went wrong. And just like I think I gravitate more towards, and I think I have more fun in an experience where like I'm winning alongside other people rather than like winning over somebody else.
You're so kind.
I don't know. It's not out of kindness. I think it's just more fun. Like it's a more sort of like I get to share that experience with other people. It's not just mine. And like that almost makes it selfish, right? That like I want other people to experience that same thing with me, so that we can all sort of like either commiserate or like, you know, celebrate the thing that we all just did together. I don't know. I just find it a little bit more satisfying to like work together to solve a problem rather than like solve a problem on my own, prove my mastery over whatever. Like that's not why I personally play games, but I you know, a lot of people do that.
This might be a podcast for another segment, but I know Jim knows this. But Jay and Mike, do you know the Enneagram profile at all?
The what?
The Enneagram personality profile at all?
No, I don't.
Is that
like that? Like you're like a 1 through 9. Like you'd be like a number on a 1 through 9, and it describes your personality to like a T.
No, I've done other personality tests, but not that one.
Okay.
Is is it arguer or something like that?
Jay's a 1.
Debater. I think I got the debater.
Yeah, that's an 8. That's a challenge. Yeah, Jim and I talk about this a lot because I do think it helps. It definitely reveals your motivations. Like that's what it's all about. Like what motivates you to do certain things. And my Enneagram number is 3, which is called the achiever or the performer. Like, and it's all about like I have this like innate desire to like achieve and win and like be the best. And it's a flaw. It's a character flaw. I'm not bragging about this. This is like a problem. And me knowing that helps me push it down. But I think sometimes that's why I struggle with co-op games. I feel like it's the equivalent of like when someone just goes on a jog to stay in shape. I'm like,
oh, sure.
I just can't like just running. Like
I
you just
do
want me
that.
to run. I'm like, but then if you say, hey, no, we're all going to meet and we're going to play 2 hours of soccer. I'm like, oh, I'll run the whole time because you're giving me a ball to chase. Like
that
that
leads me to an interesting sort of question to pose, which is like, at least in card games and in competitive card games, there isn't really it's not really that common to play team to like one team versus another team, but that would be super satisfying to me because then you get both the competition of, you know, being able to sort of prove your mastery, do better than everybody else, but you also get to share in the victory with your friends. So I mean, honestly, one of my favorite gaming moments of all time was the Star Wars Destiny 2018 World Championship when Jay, myself, and Chris won the team, you know, whatever it ended up being. But that's like one of my favorite gaming memories of all time. It was just so much fun to like sit next to each other, like all play terrible decks and just absolutely dominate our opponents. And
yes.
Yeah.
No, Mike, I think this is so good. Jim, tell them what we did.
With Keyforge?
Yeah.
So we weren't able to have the first like world championships in Keyforge because of the pandemic. And so somebody put on like the Shadow Worlds event. So it was kind of this online version of Keyforge where you jump in with the team of 3 people. You compete, I think like 96-ish teams, like right.
Yeah, there was like 270 something players.
It was absurd. And so David and I and then our friend Kevin hopped on a team together and we ended up qualifying top 8 and then made like top 16, like made top cut, and we ended up like top cutting that. And I mean, but so many fun memories of just like every round getting excited with your friends of just like, oh my gosh, we pulled this off, or oh my gosh, we're 5-0 against the best Keyforge players.
Let's go.
A, what's happening? B, are we going to win this thing? And then I think the funniest was just in Discord, everyone saying like, what a world we'd live in if our team ended up winning. Kind of like the meme of the community, and yet somehow it was just working.
Yeah, like we'd hop on like calls in between rounds, like what the heck? Like we're just going like, did you see that moment at the end of the game? And then like, because at one point Jim played Wild Wormhole into like his one out in this game to win it all, and it was like the most epic moment, and we were just like losing our minds.
I would love to be involved in something like that. Yeah.
But that's the thing. So the one thing that I'm like, hey, we dog on Fantasy Flight games sometimes, but the one thing they planned was the Keyforge World Championships was a team event. Like one member of the team had to earn an invite to Worlds, but they could bring any 2 teammates they wanted. And so everyone was really excited about that. And so now it's under new ownership. Everyone was like, hey, why don't you bring that back? Like everyone wants this team event. So I think, Mike, what you're alluding to, actually, I think there's a lot of interest there now that you say that, of like, I think a lot of people want to team up with their friends and like practice for an event and then be like, oh, you do this and I'll take this and we'll, you know, and even if you lose, it's like, you made a lot of stories and a lot of like fun times together. I do think what you're saying right now is like my epitome of like a fun gaming experience.
Yeah, I really do think team play for card games is a really unexplored concept that really needs to be explored, because every time we talk about it or have heard of it, it's been something that's been really interesting. And it's like you look at esports and there's teams and people cheering for teams. And then you look at like, I played varsity golf and it's a solo game. Like I do as well as I do by playing as well as I play regardless. But at the end of the day, it's a team of 4 and we add our scores up. So it's like, what I'm doing is a solo thing. So like playing a card game, it's like I'm playing against one other person. My teammates can't help me. But at the end of the day, it's still a team game because we add our scores up. So they should totally do something like that for card games, because I think it's viable. I would be totally down for that.
Yeah, I would love for that to exist and maybe
Well,
if it doesn't exist, we're gonna have to make it.
Especially like think of League of Legends when they do ranked. There's like I'm thinking about Fab specifically here, right? They have a list of heroes that you can play, and then you get to ban 2 heroes for the game. Like they could totally do some kind of draft like that, and then you draft your heroes or whatever. It's like they could totally do something like that for Flesh and Blood, where it's like I don't want to play against Oldhim, or I don't want to play against Briar or whoever. You can ban one hero, and then you guys draft what heroes you're going to play, and then randomly line up or something like that. They could totally do something cool.
Yeah.
That sounds
And
like a
it's
sweet
also
format.
I think it's a way to keep metas fresh in competitive games where it's like if there's clearly like a deck that's like this is just the best deck. If you do a team event and say, hey, only one member of the 3-player team can like raid this deck.
Yeah. It'll take a lot longer to solve that meta because now it's like exponentially more difficult to wrap your head around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope all the publishing companies that obviously listen to our podcast are taking notes right now.
Yeah, take this to heart. Please make this game. We're talking a little bit about like the game, like, the kind of games that we actually want to see that don't exist already, and that was sort of one of the things that we wanted to bring up. So, are there sort of other ideas that you guys have had where you're like, I really wish that this was a thing? So I definitely have some in mind myself, but I want to hear if you guys have anything interesting.
Maybe while I bring up this last point, they can think about it, because I did want to mention before we move on too fast, the thing that I dislike in co-op games, and the thing that I think I don't like in co-op games is when you kind of like say you're playing this scenario, you finally beat it, and then you want to be a harder challenge. I don't like the idea of it being like, all right, they just deal this much more damage than they did in the original version. I want it to be different. I want it to be more challenging mechanically and not just numbers, which is interesting because I think Marvel Champions actually does that a little bit in terms of like you add in the expert cards to the villain deck, you flip them, or you do the like tier 2 and tier 3, and the tier 3 has a different ability on it than the tier 1 does. I'm trying to think of Arkham Horror, which I like a lot, actually does the opposite, where it's like you just put worse things into the bag, and it's like I don't want to do that.
Yeah, it just makes your odds worse. It's like I agree. It's the most boring way to increase the difficulty.
So that was my thing that I don't like. I don't know if I can't think of anything else on the top of my head that any other co-op games that do that, but that was mine. So if you want to talk about yeah.
I was gonna say, but what is there a game that doesn't exist, like a co-op game that doesn't exist that you want to see out there?
Yeah, it's called Flesh and Blood PvE.
Hey, they announced that like 2 years ago. It's coming. Don't worry.
And then said nothing about it since.
Classic.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head at the moment. If you guys want to chat about it, I know.
So, yeah, I know Mike had a few things.
Mike's definitely thought
I'm ready
about
to go,
this.
man. I'm going to spark some ideas. So the first one is the most obvious one, which is a Star Wars cooperative card game where I get to build whatever character I want. What I actually want is I want to be able to build my own character, not play as Luke or Vader or whatever. I want to be able to pick one card that says I'm a Jedi, another card that says I'm a smuggler, another card that says I'm whatever. Like pick a job and then just like be my own character, play through some cool Star Wars-y scenarios.
Maybe have some AI artwork pop up.
Yeah,
to create your look and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would love that. I've had sort of ideas of how to design a game like that, where like you use your phone.
Is it Ted Lasso?
Yeah, exactly. The Ted Lasso cooperative card
Ted
game.
Lasso cooperative game. We did it.
Where you like design your character on your phone, and you like have your phone up and you have your character on there, and as things happen in the game, like it dynamically changes, and it's not tied to like a card or anything physical, so that it can change. I think that'd be a pretty cool idea. And then my other sort of like different, bigger, cool idea that I would really like to see is I am really curious to see if somebody can make a cooperative card game that comes in booster packs, and how a cooperative game could justify being collectible and selling packs like that, And I think the answer, or part of the answer, is like limited. So some kind of like limited mode cooperative game just sounds super fun. Of like, I'm gonna build this deck, in whatever way that I want to solve the challenges of this week or this month or whatever the publisher decides to present you with. And then, you and your friends build cool decks. Maybe you can trade cards and stuff like that and sort of end up with something. And then alongside that, like the things that you win being like, exclusive alternate art cards, or like, like you beat this boss. So you literally get the physical copy of like the drop or something like that. I think would be really cool.
That's really interesting because a long time ago I was trying to like come up with a way to, I was thinking of this actual scenario and it just dawned on me, like spurred me remembering it. But I was trying to come up with a way that a publisher could make a cooperative game that's like a almost like a Imperial Assault kind of game where it's like my idea was based off of like Destiny, the video game, where it's like you do raids, or like World of Warcraft where you do raids, and it's like everyone almost RPG-ish. Everyone has their own character with their own miniature, and then like when you kill a boss, like you just mentioned, it's like in World of Warcraft or raiding games, it's like random loot drops from defeating villains, and it's like the booster pack could be that random loot, and it's like, oh dude, I just pulled this foil whatever weapon just randomly from killing this boss, kind of thing. I think that would be really cool. I think the problem with that is that if people started buying those packs and then just selling them, like
right, exactly.
stores.
Yeah, and like how do you keep people honest in that like they actually did the thing that they said that they did, like in an event, stuff like that.
That's where it is nice, so that it's a cooperative game. So it's like, cool, you beat the game, but you're just cheating yourself in that sense.
Right. Yeah. When there's no stakes, it doesn't matter. But it would be cool to see a cooperative game that does have stakes in some way.
Gotcha.
I don't know exactly what that would look like, but I think it'd be cool to see.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just the team game.
Yeah. Because okay, so two different thoughts. One is I was like, what would be the best cooperative game? And I was actually like, any game that was just 2v2 instead of 1v1. Like any of our competitive games where it's like, oh, I could sit next to somebody and be like, okay, let's go kill this thing. Like, and then there's another team like trying to, so maybe that's a cop out, but I feel like a lot of our games don't have 2v2 like rules for them. Which I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's why Commander is kind of big in Magic, like, because you kind of do that a little bit. But the other thought I had was, the Side Scheme podcast did a draft for Marvel Champions where there were a certain number of heroes available, and you did a snake draft in certain number of aspects, and you knew the scenario. And so everyone came together for like an actual draft to pick these heroes, and then play them against a thing. And it was really fun, honestly. And there was a lot of like goofy trash talk and stuff like that, and about who's getting what, and oh my gosh, I can't believe they took this Groot before Doctor Strange or something crazy, which again, maybe that's I'm turning a cooperative game into a competitive game again. But that's I just feel like that's what would like bring me more into some of these like cooperative games, as if stuff like that was possible. But now that you mentioned that we just need more team events, I'm like full on board. Like, how do we make this happen? Even if it's community run, like let's just do all team events from now on.
I don't think cooperative is exclusive from being competitive either. Like teams is still, you're cooperating with your team.
Yeah.
In my opinion. So I don't think it's mutually exclusive. So there could definitely be a card game that comes out that's a team game, and I would consider that to be a cooperative game almost.
Yeah.
I do have another one that I thought of this back when Keyforge came out, but they should totally make a cooperative game that the decks are randomly generated, and then also the villain is randomly generated, or whatever you're fighting, the scenario is randomly generated. I don't know how you would do that. That would be really difficult.
Well, Ghost Galaxy, they're I mean, they've basically said like Keyforge, they were already working on like algorithmically created like games before Keyforge became available to buy back. And so they did Keyforge because they're like, well, it makes sense for this to be our first one. But they've been very clear that they are actively working on other algorithmically generated kind of games in the Keyforge like idea of like, hey, what if things were kind of made for you and you don't get to customize? So I'm very interested to see what they do with that.
That is interesting. One of the things that I forgot to mention in like the what do you like about co-op games is like progression between games and sort of you're either adding cards to your deck or increasing your stats or somewhat, something like that in between each game, and creating that sense of progression. I think is like, yeah, it gives me that dopamine hit that I crave. So I would be curious to see how a unique deck game would implement that, but I think it could. But yeah, just something I've thought about.
And not all co-op games are that way. Like Pandemic is just a one scenario.
Yeah, true.
Thing,
it's just
like
a one-off. Yeah.
I
just prefer when
even Marvel Champions is like
that's one of the reasons why
when it
not,
first
like,
came
drawn to
out.
that game though.
Yeah, it's very scenario based. They did come out with the like campaigns, which I think is something they really needed to do because it adds that dynamic element of adding things between scenarios, whether it's like equal, like there's a slew of ways that they do it in every campaign. But yeah, I think that I also enjoy that element of like in bettering your character for future scenarios is really cool to me. Like that RPG kind of feeling of like leveling up, essentially. All right, that was a big. That was a big.
Exhausted this topic for now.
That was a big podcast.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah. Anything else on that? Like, or any final thoughts on?
Jim, were there any game co-op style games that you could think of that you would be interested in?
Nothing was immediately coming up. Now it's sitting in silence and blank slate of a memory over here. So.
He's waiting for the Ted Lasso game.
Yes,
I cannot wait.
Jim, you would love like a Christmas movie IP themed cooperative game.
Put me in.
Home Alone, the cooperative game.
Home Alone, the cooperative game. Play as the bandits or the guys breaking in, trying to break through the traps.
It's just a heist game.
So good. All right, I'm out of words.
Same. Happy
Sounds
birthday
good.
to David.
Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys next time.
Peace. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.